taxation decisions that the government have made around inheritance tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, where you've given away money. People know about the ageing population for some time. We've cut the criteria so people can't get community care. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. This is what Jeremy was talking about.
Have you ever found yourself in a high-pressure situation only to realise you're not fully prepared? That's exactly what happened to Angela Rayner when Andrew Neil challenged her on Labour's spending plans with solid, undeniable facts. As the conversation unfolded, Rayner struggled to defend her party's economic policies and spending strategy, prompting many viewers to question how well they truly understand the current government's economic policies. For many, this interview was a wake-up call, forcing a rethink of long-held assumptions about political leadership and competence in the UK. Known for his tough and direct interview style, Andrew Neil put Rayner in a challenging position, and as the deputy leader of the Labour Party, she arrived ready to stand up for her party's economic plans. But things quickly went off course. The confident tone she had at the start began to fade, leaving viewers with a simple but pressing question. What exactly happened in this interview that suddenly placed Labour on the defensive? Watch until the end to uncover the surprising details behind the moment that drew so much attention.
They raised the capital gains tax in the coalition government.
Well, what I'm saying, Andrew, and
what you're saying is wrong. They raised the capital gains tax to 28%.
What I'm saying is that they've given tax cuts to absolutely the richest in the country at the same time where they've told the poorest people in this country over the past, it is true, at the same time that you've told the people in this country over the last 6 years, we've got to cut our coffee. No, let me finish this point because you've interrupted me and I want to make this point. It's really serious to people in this country that you've told people we've got to live within our means, we've got to have this austerity, we've got to cut. You've cut, and do you know what? Debt's rising and the amount of money that's going into the economy, you know, you've not made it better. Our economy is worse as a result of 6 years of austerity. And now you're saying all of a sudden we can spend money.
No, hold on.
And that's wrong because you're spending it.
You're just off now.
No, I'm
let
not
me bring
just
you
off,
back
Andrew,
to let me bring you back to the question. Look, you think there may be an election coming up. So you need to get your policies.
At the start, the interview seemed to be going smoothly for Rayner, as she appeared comfortable and ready to discuss both her own views and the Labour Party's stance on major economic issues. Her body language was calm, and her voice sounded steady and relaxed, giving the impression that she was fully prepared for the discussion ahead. But that calm quickly vanished when Andrew Neil, demonstrating why he is known as one of the toughest interviewers in political media, began asking direct, pointed questions that immediately rattled her confidence. The relaxed posture she had shown at the beginning started to fade as the questions became more specific, with one in particular focusing on corporation tax seemingly shattering her composed demeanour.
By changing the current corporation tax and capital gains tax structures.
Andrew, we've talked about in absolute detail about the current tax system, and we said actually that the money that the decisions that the government have made and the decisions on where they're spending current money is completely inappropriate.
So how much would you save?
You've cut 50%. In my constituency, both of my councils have seen over 50% cuts to their budget. So all of the people that need support are in acute services now, crippling our NHS.
So you would be able to give them more money by changing the corporation tax and changing the capital.
When the topic of corporation tax came up, Rayner appeared completely unprepared, exposing a clear gap in her preparation. As Neil pressed her to clarify the Labour Party's position on potential corporation tax cuts, she struggled to give a coherent response, offering instead a vague reply. At one point she said, "I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is not," but the statement never developed into a clear policy position. For viewers, this moment immediately raised concerns, as her difficulty in explaining the party's stance on such a critical economic issue cast serious doubt, leaving many to wonder how a senior party figure could struggle with the details of a key policy area.
Would you reverse it?
Hold on. Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
I think that at the moment, cutting at a time where we need those services and people need those services is the wrong decision to make.
But I'm asking you, would you reverse the cut in corporation tax?
But I'm telling you, Andrew, that our priority is
not telling me the question.
I am. I'm saying that the cuts in corporation tax, the cuts in inheritance tax, the cuts in capital gains tax.
But what's the cut in capital gains tax?
But what's really important, Andrew...
No, excuse me, I'm asking...
Sensing the weakness in her responses, Neil pressed further, asking for details about capital gains tax. And under this pressure, Rayner's uncertainty became even more apparent. Then came a moment that left many economic observers shaking their heads. She made a bold claim about conservative tax policies, which was quickly shown to be incorrect. This wasn't a minor slip. It was a major factual error that undermined both her credibility and the Labour Party's position on economic issues. As the interview continued, Rayner attempted several times to steer the conversation away from the toughest questions. But these efforts only highlighted her struggle, making it seem as though she was losing control of the discussion. The confident deputy leader who had started the interview now appeared uneasy and under pressure, becoming increasingly defensive as Neil maintained his sharp, persistent questioning. What began as an opportunity to showcase Labour's economic vision quickly devolved into an uncomfortable display of uncertainty on key policies, prompting viewers to question not only Rayner's readiness, but also whether the party itself was fully prepared to lead. In today's world, moments like this rarely go unnoticed, and social media reactions appeared almost instantly, with platforms filling with criticism as people shared clips and opinions on what many were calling a disastrous performance.
Said it couldn't be done, but Britain has agreed a free trade deal with Australia. The mob turns on BBC Newsnight, and good news, the jobs recovery gathers pace. Good evening, I'm Andrew Neil. We were told that they would take over 10 years to do. We were assured we didn't have the expertise to do them. Yet in very short order, every free trade deal we had via the European Union has been rolled over to be with the UK, in some cases like Japan, improving them along the way. And now we've done an entirely new free trade deal with our friends.
Political commentators and journalists quickly questioned whether Rayner is ready for a leadership role, with many asking, if she struggles with basic questions, how can she be trusted to handle the complex challenges of running a government? Mistakes like this can have lasting consequences, as history has shown that failing to communicate economic policies clearly can seriously undermine both a politician's reputation and the credibility of their entire party.
All this money from those women who were born in the 1950s is completely unacceptable, and millions of women have been plunged into poverty and don't just want handouts by Social Security. They want their money back, and quite rightly so. They should be feeling angry about what the government did, and we will right that injustice, because justice is...
As Rayner continued to stumble through the interview, she may have inadvertently damaged Labour's standing with voters, leaving many to question whether this was truly the level of leadership they could trust, and whether Labour could competently manage the nation's economy. The situation worsened when Andrew Neil shifted the discussion to Labour's ambitious housing plan, which promised 1.5 million new homes to address the UK's housing crisis. While the plan initially sounded impressive, Neil's probing revealed cracks in Rayner's vision. Industry experts had already raised doubts, citing current market conditions and practical obstacles that could make Labour's targets unrealistic, and Neil, as persistent as ever, pressed Rayner on these concerns, exposing further uncertainty in her responses.
50s. They stole their pension, that contract, that agreement that they thought they had, and then accelerated it so that those women didn't have the chance to prepare for that. We've said we'll right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost. This is their money that they've had stolen off them, and it's completely unacceptable. And any government should act responsibly.
Rayner remained fixed on insisting that Labour's housing targets were mandatory, seemingly overlooking real-world construction challenges such as land availability, infrastructure requirements, and the shortage of skilled workers, focusing instead on lofty promises rather than practical realities. The pressure intensified when Neil introduced immigration figures into the discussion, exposing that under current trends, Labour's housing commitments would be mathematically impossible to achieve, further highlighting the gaps in her planning and understanding.
Your average politician and my background, and people know that I'm from a very working class background. I am quite an interesting character to people in Parliament, so often I've always had that level of scrutiny. And as a woman as well, you feel like you have to prove yourself. You go in a room and they don't suddenly think, oh, well, you're a natural leader.
Right.
So therefore, coming from a working class background and being a woman, you kind of feel like, okay, I've got to earn the respect in the room, which is fine.
Neil continued, emphasising that without factoring in population growth, Labour's housing plan could never move beyond a dream. And once again, Rayner struggled to reconcile these conflicting realities. Watching her fumble through vague answers about who the 1.5 million homes would actually serve was difficult, as the disconnect between the party's promises and the UK's changing demographics became increasingly clear. Rayner's apparent lack of understanding of how immigration impacts housing only compounded the issue, with her answers sometimes contradicting her own party's data, leaving viewers to question whether Labour had fully assessed her readiness before unveiling this plan. The back and forth with Neil exposed a deeper problem in Labour's housing strategy. Building more homes is only part of the solution. But Rayner's inability to address the complex links between housing, infrastructure, and population growth highlighted a concerning lack of depth in the parties. Approach. By the end of the interview, the public was left with a tangle of contradictions and unanswered questions, prompting many to doubt Labour's ability to manage the UK's economic challenges. What do you think about Angela Rayner's performance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.